I received excellent scientific instruction in my elementary school days, and one of the first things they taught us was when you have an open question that has multiple possible resolutions,
Mm-hmm.
it is the job of the researcher to sincerely entertain each of the possibilities one by one. You start with the assumptions of that possibility and follow where they lead. And
Mm-hmm.
that through that process, you discover that with one of the perspectives, all of the intractable or many of the intractable obstacles seem to just evaporate, and that points you to what's probably the right answer. So when they started saying they had all these attributes of this object that didn't look like a regular comet, I started focusing on those attributes, trying to say, now, could this be technology? And if it were technology, what kind of technology would have these attributes? And then every announcement, I would test the next statement against that perspective, and it holds up as technology.
And I saw a post you mentioning about that. That was related to the primarily CO2 and nickel outgassing. Is that correct?
That's right. Well, okay, that was sort of the entry point into trying to sort out what it might be. A comet normally outgasses water, which is in the form of carbon dioxide and carbon
Mm-hmm.
monoxide,
Mm-hmm.
and those sublimate into solid gas. Those become the comet's tail when it approaches the sun, and normally the
Mm-hmm.
tail will point away from the sun. But they noticed that this object was leaking CO2 and nickel, which is not what the astronomers are used to. So it's either a really, really odd object that we don't know what it is, we've never encountered it before, or there's something else going on. So working from those two attributes first, I started performing inquiries to say, okay, what kind of an engine could drive a ship that would have the potential to be leaking those materials?
Mm-hmm.
And I came up with what's called a nickel CO2 plasma engine,
Hmm.
which is actually a candidate for interstellar travel if we were going to develop a ship. That's one of the approaches we might take to it.
So,
But
out of all the different ways that they're theorizing on doing interstellar travel, that's one of them.
yeah, that's one of them.
What?
And I mean, there's some drawbacks to it. One of the drawbacks is that it would require so much fuel that the ship would have to be very large.
This
And
thing is large, though.
yeah, it is large. That's right. So when they said it was large, I thought, well, that's interesting because that goes along with the possibility that it's that kind of an engine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, so then the question is, we have a number of other things. The object was glowing from the front as well as from the back, which a comet doesn't normally do. And
Yeah, that
so,
was weird. I was thinking that had something to do with the velocity, though. But maybe I'm just making stuff up. I'm no scientist, but the thing was coming in hot, so that's
right.
why I think when it first was really, I mean, literally and figuratively coming in hot, and as it was coming in hot, I think that maybe the sun was like burning up the front side of it. That's why it looked like it was outgassing in the front, but it's not doing that now, as far as I understand. It's
Well,
outgassing backwards.
it's gone through some permutations as it gets closer to the sun.
Yeah.
It's changing color and things like that. But a CO2 plasma engine would leak plasma as well as nickel
Ah.
and CO2, and the plasma has a tendency to glow. So
Ah.
that theoretically could explain a glow we weren't expecting.
And it's making it hard to tell exactly how big this thing is inside the glow in the cloud
Right.
because of all that outgassing. And it's
That's
all
right.
and it's surrounding it. It's not tailing it, basically.
I don't know if you've seen the ESA's video that they released on the object,
Mm.
which is much better resolved than what was released from the other Mars camera.
Mm-hmm. I
Um,
haven't.
it's a considerably larger dot this
Yeah.
time,
Yes,
and
considerably.
you can see that it's tumbling, which is something a traditional comet, shouldn't do, depending on its shape.
Wow, it is tumbling.
Right now,
Amazing.
the thing is that if this is estimated to be between a mile to 3 miles in diameter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if it were inhabited by creatures similar to us and they wanted to simulate gravity, it would need to tumble once a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And they would get Earth-like gravity. So it could well be that it's designed to tumble. I also double checked that any vessel powered by a nickel CO2 plasma engine would have a tendency to tumble.
Why?
Why? Just because of the way that the venting happens with the gases that keep the. What it's doing is it's using CO2 to convert, I think, to convert nickel into plasma, and it's venting plasma.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's fascinating. And Oumuamua tumbled as well. Correct.
Right, and very interesting because we named Oumuamua. It's a Hawaiian name. It means scout or first distant messenger. But if in fact it served as a first distant messenger, then it might not be a surprise that we have other objects following it.
Yeah, so you've heard of the Borisov one that was basically just a comet from a different solar system. Have you heard of that one?
Right, I've heard that also. Yes.
Yeah. Part of me, the skeptic brain in me goes, it's a massive universe and things could be coming from all different directions, made up of God knows what. But that this before I like saw this tumbling and the tendency to tumble like with that type of engine, and also I it seems like an intelligent move, right? If you were to survey a solar system, to like kind of sneak in, be in a spot, make it difficult for the intelligent species in the solar system to see you, and then just kind of deflect right out, like kind of skip over us like a pond, So it seems like something an intelligent object would do, wouldn't you say?
Well, it's hard to say. If it were making intelligent changes in course, we could say that. The
Mm-hmm.
fact that it's tumbling doesn't really necessarily indicate that, depending on its composition and its size and its shape.
Mm-hmm.
A
Mm-hmm.
natural object could tumble. But the very least we can say is it's not a natural object that we're familiar with. That doesn't mean that it couldn't be natural. It could be. But as we have all these little pieces fall into place saying, well, this is unusual and this is unusual and we haven't seen this before and so forth, the fact that they all play out sensibly in relation to a single kind of engine, which is a kind of engine that we might actually use to get to another star. It's also traveling at a much higher speed than a comet normally travels. And the track it's taking is very suspicious. If our NASA scientists had deliberately planned a track for a probe through an exosolar system, they couldn't have done better. It's right in the plane of the planets, and it's coming through on a path that's perfectly suited to observe a lot of the planet. So that's suspicious. I think Avi Loeb did the math calculations and said there's some really, really low probability that would happen by accident. I'm not really a believer in probability. I'm sort of the guy who thinks every lottery ticket has a 50-50 chance.
I can be like that as well. So I get it. And yeah, and there's animations of this, but you're basically talking about this. It's gonna basically skip through the solar system in a way where it's going to get a real good look at us, and we're not going to get a real good look at it.
Right, and that's also a little suspicious that when it makes its nearest approach to us, we're going to be blocked from seeing it by the sun. That
Yes.
that feels like if there were intelligent choices being made, somebody might have done that.
Correct. And that's it's I don't quite understand all the math behind this, but it's hyperbolic trajectories coming from the Virgo constellation I looked up this morning, but I thought I had read something different before. What direction have you seen that this is coming from?
Yeah, no, I haven't scoped out the direction that it's coming through from. I know that I've been tracking, how far it was from the sun, what point it was halfway to the sun from the edge of our solar
Correct.
system, things like that. But I know that it's the trajectory it's on means it's not comparable to a traditional comet. It's not going to loop the sun like most comets do and then loop back. it's going to proceed on out of the universe the way Oumuamua did. Out of the solar.
Yes. Yeah. And
Out
I'm reading as of as of October 3rd, it's basically invisible to us behind Mars at this time. And had you heard of anything about the potential mission to like use a different basically an older probe space system out near Mars to try to get a better look at it? Have you heard
Yeah, they
about
also
this?
have a solar probe that they could repurpose to this if they wanted to. But I
Hmm.
think, from what I've heard so far, all they've opted to do is to reposition the cameras from these various probes to try to get a better picture of what the thing is. And
Hmm.
so, what I linked here is, to my knowledge, the best image we have of it right now. But as I said, we're waiting on the high-res camera, which should have even better images. The problem is, I don't think that Avi Loeb and people, Michio Kaku thought this through completely. These are popularizers of science.
Hmm.
And they were so wrapped up in the excitement of, well, this might be natural, it might not be. I don't think they thought through what would it mean if it's not. And if the images show unequivocally that it's not, do they really want to be the guy who unilaterally discloses non-human life to the planet?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've read the couple so on this one, Avi came out with a really like a paper very quickly on it, and it was to me read very much like a I don't know. It just read like a hypothetical what if, and like then like what can we learn from like what ifs as we start finding more of these what ifs and as they start entering the solar system. But then he goes on TV and then they take sound bites from his TV clips and stuff like that, and they plaster it everywhere, and then everyone thinks like that's when the extreme what do you want to call it? Extreme speculation starts running amok, and then you start ending up with Kool-Aid cults
Right.
and stuff like that. Are you concerned at all about some Kool-Aid cults out of this one?
Well, you know, if their goal was to put all of that chatter to bed, the very simplest way to do it would have been to post a picture of this
Of
object
it.
and unequivocally said it's a
Mm-hmm.
natural object.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But they haven't done that, and their delays didn't help that. Um, uh, Avi Loeb jumped almost immediately from talking every day about October 3rd, October 3rd, October 3rd. That's the day we're going to be able to see this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly on October 4th, he was talking about October 29th when it's going to make its closest approach to the Earth. And what if it changes course? It's not an answer to make, to settle people's minds about what this object is. And he's not saying anything new substantive about the object. They keep repeating the same anomalies they've talked about all the way along with it. So we're not even getting firm opinions from anybody as to what are they seeing? What do they think they're seeing?
Why do you know why they changed it to the 29th of October?
Well, because that's the point where it's going to be closest to us. Before that, it was where it's going to be closest to Mars.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that date shifts because of the distance. But um,
So
on October 29th, we aren't going to be able to see what it's doing. So now that becomes the what's going on with it. So far, from what I can tell, there has been no change of course of the object that isn't explained through natural forces. As a matter of fact, it's because it wasn't changing. All the solar wind effects should have affected its velocity, but it didn't, or not tangibly. And so that's why they were able to calculate how massive it had to be. It had to be a pretty large object to not be affected by the solar wind. The concept of a solar sail is if you had a really, really lightweight object, very, very
mm-hmm.
not
Mm-hmm.
massive object out there in the shape of a sail, that you could push it with the solar wind the same way you push a sailboat with the wind.
Yeah, and this thing's estimated 1,000 feet to up to 3.5 miles, and the coma spans thousands of kilometers.
Right. And that makes sense that it would, but if it were a natural object, if it were a comet, the tail of a comet extends a great distance, but it always points away from the sun. Interesting. Venus still has a remnant comet's tail that points away from the sun as it approaches the sun.
Really? I did not know that. I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah,
That's
one of the books I wrote, I took a break from my books on cosmology to write a book about Immanuel Velikovsky about 60 years after he wrote his famous controversial book called Worlds in Collision. And he presented a scenario for the birth of the planet Venus that basically argued that Venus was a much more recent addition to the solar system, like thousands of years, not billions, and laid out all of this information based on ancient references as to why that must be true. Since that time, the astronomers who study the exosolar systems have basically come around to endorsing his point of view without ever mentioning his name, that the perspective they are agreed upon for what happens with the formation of planets is that gas giant planets form in the first 10 million years, and rocky planets form in the second 10 million years as a result of collisions. Well, that's exactly what Velikovsky said, that Venus was the product of a collision with Jupiter.
Yeah, sometimes some of that stuff sounds like just some Clovis first stuff, like just because, you know what I mean? Like it is like a dogmatic viewpoint, of how that would work. But who knows? So I wanted to just briefly mention because we're going to be because we were talking about how this 3i Atlas is now unobservable until December because it's behind Mars.
Right.
We are going to be having, and Laird, you're totally invited, but we're going to be having a 3i Atlas viewing party with my friend Aaron Hines telescope. He's got a very well-equipped telescope that he's going to be bringing down to Scottsdale, Arizona, where we're going to be having a 3i Atlas viewing party, which is an after party for the Quest for Ancient Civilization conference being hosted by Wandering Wolf Productions and Worldview Z Media.